Hello students and welcome to the lecture. So students, as we know that we are covering the National Disaster Management Authority, right? That is a topic on which we have been discussing. Okay. And basically you can say within this topic, these are the subtopics that we have scheduled for the discussion. Like the definition of the disaster. Okay. Like the disaster happened over time in India. Okay. Like the causes of a disaster. Like the impacts of a disaster. Like the elements of disaster management in India, like the establishment of the NDMA, like the objectives of the NDMA, like the functions of the NDMA, like the additional functions of the NDMA, like the State Disaster Management Authority, like the District Disaster Management Authority. Okay, so these are the topics that we have scheduled for the discussion. Okay, if we talk about the topics that we have covered so far, so basically we have done with the definition part, we have done with the disaster happened over time, we have done with the okay, I think I have choose the wrong pen over here. Just give me a minute. Okay, we have done with the definition of the disaster, we have done with the disaster happened over time, we have done with the causes of a disaster, we have done with the impacts of a disaster, and the topics on which we have been discussing is the element of disaster management in India. Okay, and if we talk about the topics that we are left with, so we are left with the establishment of the NDMA, objectives of the NDMA, functions of the NDMA, the additional functions and the responsibilities of the NDMA, State Disaster Management Authority, District Disaster Management Authority. Okay, so this is the picture that we have created so far altogether. In this lecture, we will start from where we had left in the previous one. Okay, so let us start with the elements of disaster management. So before starting the new topic, let us remind the previous one. Okay, like in the previous lecture, we were discussing the quick response, and basically we will come to know that quick response is a crucial for minimizing the damage caused by the disaster. And generally it is happened on two occasions, like in the form of immediate actions, immediate response that is to be given during and after a disaster. During and after a disaster, to ensure that the safety and well-being of the affected population could be ensured. Safety and well-being of the affected population could be ensured. So that is a thing that we have discussed. In this, we have discussed like there are several things like the emergency response systems. Okay, like coordinating efforts by the various agencies to respond to disaster promptly. Okay, thereafter the search and rescue operations, like deploying the teams to find and rescue the individuals who got trapped or injured during the disaster. All right. Thereafter, the medical assistance, providing the urgent medical care to the injured. And third is the evacuation plans, implementing strategies to move people to safe quickly and efficiently. Okay. So this is the picture that we have created so far altogether. All right. I hope that you have revised the previous lecture in the well enough manner. Before you have come for this lecture, as many times I have told you, that is for your own benefit. So if you are doing this on the regular basis, you will be benefited only. Okay. So in this lecture, we will start with the fourth element, all right, of the disaster management. Like we know, in the elements of the disaster management, the strategies that we practice in India, we have the four elements: risk reduction, risk mitigation, quick response, and the recovery. So far, out of four, we have completed the three ones, like risk reduction risk mitigation and quick response we have covered. Now we are left with the last one, that is the recovery part. Okay, so we are required to cover the recovery part over here. Okay, so basically the recovery phase involves the implementing the short term and the long term actions. Okay, so by name itself you can say that basically it is after the events, not during the events, not before the events. Before the events, the two things out of four elements like the risk reduction and the risk mitigation could be done. Okay, risk reduction is like visiting the place, analyzing the structure, okay, finding out the vulnerabilities, then making the risk mapping. All right, thereafter the education campaign and early warning system. Okay, that is the risk reduction, and these actions are prior actions. These actions will not take during the ongoing of the event and after the event. Okay, similarly the next one is the you can say the risk mitigation. Risk mitigation also takes during the action. Okay, not aftermath and not during. Okay, in the risk mitigation we know there is a structural and the non-structural policies. Like structural policies are like making the flood, you can say flood niles, okay, then the sea walls and the earthquake resistance buildings, these type of structures. Non-structural means the policies and the strategies that we make to save the people and all. Okay, quick response is a method that we use during or after the disaster. Like when the disaster has occurred, then whatever help we are providing, that is the quick response. When the disaster has occurred and the disaster has gone, now what help is providing to the affected area, to the people of affected area, that is also the part of quick response. So out of four, the three are before and during the disaster, even after it. But recovery is the element of the disaster management that is only practiced after the occurring of the event. That is only practiced after the occurring of the event, not during the event, okay, not before the event. All right, because if nothing happens, then what should be recovered? Everything is as it is in the form. Okay, during when the disaster is occurring, when the you can say destruction is still going on, there is no point to get recovered. The first point that is required over there is that all of them must be rescued and must be you can say evacuate immediately. Okay, once the disaster will gone, once the things are normalized, then only we could think about the recovery, because then only the recovery will be in the proper sense. Okay, so now I hope that I have built enough build up in your mind so that you could connect the points or the dots together. So the recovery phase basically involves the implementing the short term and the long term actions to restore normalcy after the disaster. Okay, like short term events, if we talk about it, then we can say, suppose there is a village, okay, and the flood hit the village. Okay, so basically the flood water will entered in the houses of the people, damage the houses, will entered in the agricultural fields of the people, will damage the crops and all. Alright, like you can say there is a village in which the flood hit the village. Then the water will enter in the houses of the people. Okay, will enter in the fields of the people, the agricultural fields, and the crops will be damaged. Alright, and basically some other things will be happen. Then what will happen? The people would be rescued, would be evacuated on a temporary basis till the flood water normalize in the status. Okay, and once the flood water leaves the village, the people will allow to go back to their respective homes. Okay, then after some time they will be able to continue their agriculture practices. Okay, so basically to revive the normal you can say social economic life of the village, the short-term policies could be implemented. All right, like the government may repair the houses. All right, the government may pay some compensation to the victim's family. Okay, the government may pay some compensation to the farmers whose crops got damaged in the floods and all. Long-term actions are basically you can say applies to those areas where the devastation was, you can say, at much that destroyed each and everything. Okay, for example, we can say, suppose there is any village, okay, or not a village, but there is any city area and all, okay, and the earthquake hit the area. So when the earthquake will hit the area, what will happen? The structures will be demolished. The houses, the schools, the hospitals, the buildings, roads, bridges and all, they all will be demolished. All right. Now you can imagine, like in the flood water, the structures are moreover remains the same. Okay. Only the flood water contaminated the local supply that could be purified again. All right. Only they are destroying the crop field after the absorption of the water or evaporation of the water. When the water will leave the field, the crops could be grown again. Okay. So there it is possible that during the short time, the things could be normalized. But when it compare with the earthquake that hit the area, demolished the houses, buildings, whether residential, commercials, demolished the bridges and all. Now you could imagine by yourself, is it possible to recover all the things in a shorter duration? Is it possible? No, it is not possible. Okay. So basically for those type of disasters that caused a catastrophic event while occurring, they require the long-term policies. They require the long-term policies and the long-term actions. Okay. To restore the normalcy after disaster. Okay. And this includes several things like the damage assessment. The first thing is the damage assessment. Evaluating the extent of damage to the infrastructure, homes, and communities. Okay. Like whenever you have seen the disaster news in your televisions, on the social media platforms and everywhere. Okay. So basically you have found the one thing. Like they not only giving the data regarding the death tolls and the, you can say, missing people, but they also providing the data regarding the demolishing of the properties, regarding the destroyment to the properties. Okay. Like about this much property has been destroyed, like 40 crores, 30 crores of the economic property was destroyed. 10 people, 20 people got died, 50 misplaced and all. This kind of news you have seen in the televisions, on the social media platforms and other various, you can say, media and news media platforms regarding the disasters. Okay. So basically what are these? These are the step of the damage assessment. Okay. Like in the recovery phase, the first thing, that is the foremost thing, is the assessment of the damage. Like how much damage the particular disaster has caused. Without evaluating it, without even know, like what is the current status of the economy, what is the current status of the infrastructure, the homes of the people, what is the current status in the communities, how we will make a plan to recover them, whether in the short-term basis or on the long-term basis. Okay. Even you can say, suppose you are in the administration phase. Okay. And then in nearby your administrative area or the administrative territory, there is a disaster like the earthquake. Okay. The earthquake has occurred and then the earthquake has gone. Now you are required to make the recovery. Okay. You are required to make the recovery, whether the short term or the long term. So what things you required? The first, you are required to give the compensation amount. You are required to rebuild the area. You are required to search and rescue operations for the missing peoples. How you will do it? Because of the data. You require the data. Without having the data, you won't be able to do these things. Okay, so the data is the foremost thing. You may visit by yourself, or you may ask your subordinate to go to the place and find out the data. Like you can say your subordinate that has been sent there, or you when you have gone there. Okay, then you have assesses the area. Like you say, 200 people's got that, 500 people's got missed. This is the you can say social damage that has been caused by the disaster. Claimed life of 200 people and misplaced and missed the people like 500. Okay, thereafter, then you see the map of the place you have found. Like there were 40 homes, 10 skyscrapers or the long tall buildings, and at least 20 bridges. Out of this, you have found now only there is 10 homes. Okay, there is only 2 buildings and there is only 2 bridges. Then if you merge together, then what you will find? Like there is only 14 structures remains the same out of the 70. So at least 56 structures got demolished or got damaged in a manner that are required to be recovered. Then what you will do? Now you have got the basic data. On the basis of this, you will formulate the policy or the short term on the long term. Like how much compensation amount is to be given to the people who has lost their loved ones, to the people who got injured badly. All right. Thereafter, on the economic basis, you will try to calculate the economic value of the structure, like the houses, like the buildings, like the bridges that got demolished during that earthquake event. And then on the basis of the economic value, you will estimate like how much damage the particular earthquake has caused to the economy. Okay. The same manner we include while we're showing the newses on the television. Like in the Kerala flood, if I'm not wrong, nearly about 80 crores property in some districts got damaged. And data is more than this. I'm talking about only some districts. Okay, I'm not talking about the entire states. Remember this. So basically, if you talk from this point of view, so what you are getting? Like 80 crores. They estimated by analyzing the damage that caused to the roads, bridges, buildings, and houses. Then they calculated the economic value and then they represent the data. Okay. So the first thing is cleared in your mind. Damage assessment. First thing is required to assess the damage that has been caused. Second is the stabilization and restoration. Okay. Stabilization and restoration. Taking steps to stabilize affected areas and being the restoration of services and the infrastructure. So here, if you look at carefully what you are getting, you will get there are 2 words. First is the stabilize. Second is the restoration. How many words are there? 2 words are there. Stabilize and the restoration. What is the implications of it? Okay, let us understand. So what is the implication of these 2 words? First is the stabilize word. It means that first ever thing that is required to stabilize the place. Okay, like you can say, if the flood has affected the area. Okay, so it is possible to recover the area when the flood water is still there, when the flood is still there, when the heavy rains are still going on. Is it possible? If the earthquake has affected the area, it is possible to restore the area while the earthquake is still there. It is occur on the regular intervals. If the tsunami, if the tornadoes or hurricanes hit the areas, all right, is it possible to recover the area during that things? No. Why? Because if you try to rebuild the infrastructure and again the earthquake, again the tornado, tsunami and the flood hit back the area, again your infrastructure will be demolished. Okay. If you try to replace the people, okay, or you can say resettle the people on that affected areas, and again the thing is occurring, then do you think that the people will be safe there? Like first you evacuate them, you took them to some place for temporary basis, then before completion of the event or the disaster, you send them back. Then again you are required to go back and rescue them. Then again you send them back, and then again the disaster came. Then you have to go back, take them out. So what do you think? Is it possible that without stabilizing the area, restoration is possible? No, it is not possible. Okay, so the first thing is that to ensure that whether the area is stabilized or not, whether the thing has gone or not. Okay, because once there is a surety that the disaster has not or longer existed at that time, then only the place could be declared a stabilized place. Okay, once the affected area got stabilized, it means the situations are normal. The disaster is not likely to occur again on that given time. Then the restoration process start. Okay, like houses got repaired, okay, rebuilt. The people who were evacuated to some temporary bases, the people will start coming back to the place. All right, then the road and other kind of services like the telecommunication, all right, like the internet services, that all things will be restored. And again the roads, the bridges, the railway lines, even the airports and all, they all will be started rebuilding. Okay, so that is known as the restoration of services and the infrastructure. Okay, so this is the second step of stabilization and the restoration. Third is the reconstruction. Third is the reconstruction. Like, what is the meaning of this? Like here, if you break it down, you will get that it is made up of two words: construction, then the reconstruction. Okay, it means that the thing was already constructed, was already built, and was already there. Then again, we reconsidered it. We again made it. Okay, so basically, it includes rebuilding homes. Okay, rebuilding the homes, schools, hospitals, and other critical infrastructures that are required to ensure the normal life and the well-being on the basis of safety and health safety of the people. Okay, like the homes of the people which get destroyed during the disaster, they will be repaired. Schools, colleges of the students, they will be rebuilt. The hospitals and the local medical care which get overwhelmed and which got destroyed during the disaster, that all will be recovered. And other critical infrastructure includes the police stations, okay, like the civil administrations, like the airport, railways, and all, that all the things would be restored. Okay, so far we have done with the three things. Like the first is the damage assessment, then the stabilization and the restoration, then the reconstruction, then the economic recovery, then the economic recovery we have to cover. Okay, economic recovery means supporting the businesses and industries to resume operations and restore the livelihoods. Okay, like we have discussed during the impacts of disasters, usually whenever the disaster impacts or hit the area, the local businesses and industries also get affected because of the damage of the infrastructure, because of the, you can say, damage of the buildings and all. Okay, and because of the disruption in normal functioning of the economy, the businesses and industries got destroyed, and because of this they got unable to continue their operations, and many people may lose their livelihoods. Okay, so that will be checked. Last is psychological support. Okay, it is like providing the mental health services to help the individuals and the communities to cope with the trauma and losses. Like we have discussed, the psychological impact that leaves on the people's mind who have survived the disaster. Okay, because they have, you can say, lost their loved ones. Okay, they have lost their livelihoods, they have lost their savings and all, so they required some psychological support. Thereafter, the recovery. In recovery phase, efforts focused on several things. First is restoring the essential information and records. It means ensuring the vital data and documents are recovered and secured. Like if we talk about an area which is a district or having the administration purposes, so they will have some data and documents in the offices. If the earthquake hit the area, if the tsunami or the floods hit the area, so in such a case, the one of the main scenario and the one of the main concern is that to recover the data and the documents that are presented there, because they contains the critical information. After this, returning to the normal operations, implementing the procedures and the practices to resume the normal business and the community activities. Okay, then the evaluating and improving the things, like analyzing the response and recovery efforts to identify the lessons learned and improve the future disaster management practices. Okay, so we can say understanding and effectively implementing these elements of disaster management are critical for reducing the impact of the disaster, enhancing the resilience of the communities in India. Okay, so students, basically this is the clear picture of the elements of the disaster management in India that we have covered in this lecture. So basically, we have done with this lecture. In the next lecture, we will continue from here. Till then, just revise the facts and figures that all we have discussed in this lecture. Be ready for the other lecture. With this note, let's end this lecture and thank you.